All right, good morning. Welcome in for another Friday Safety Focus of the Week, September 9th, 2020. This week's code of conduct is don't overpromise or underdeliver. Ben Dowd, you have any words of wisdom on this code item of the week?
I don't know if they're wisdomful, but a lot of times we do overpromise, not on purpose. And when that happens, I think when we identify it, I think the most important thing is to get everybody together and let them know that something's changed, where we're not going to be able to deliver something, rather than just sit and forget and let things explode.
Well said. Excellent job. Another 7 days without a recordable. Up to 82. Let's keep on the JHAs, pre-planning, communication. Remember the code. So let's keep it going. Again, contact Health and Safety. If there's any site-specific needs on the safety front, we're here to help. Here to provide a job site free from all recognized hazards. With that said, we have Amy joining us today for another wellness series. So thanks for starting your day with us, Amy, and the floor is yours.
Good morning. Share my screen here. All right, so today we are going to talk about stress management. So when we're talking about stress, I really like to keep this in the back of our minds. It's not the stress that kills us, it's our reaction to it. So to some degree, we have control of how we respond to stress, how we manage stress, and that actually changes both our long-term and short-term outcomes. So if we think of our stress response, we have acute stress and chronic stress. So let's talk about acute stress first, because that's what sets everything off. So it could be something really big, like you're working on Williston Road and you see a car barreling towards you, and all of a sudden you have to jump out of the way. So how does your body know in a split second how to jump out of the way? So that car barreling at you signals your brain to activate your fight or flight system, which is a release of a bunch of hormones, which causes this immediate response in your body where your heart rate increases, your blood pressure increases, you increase how fast you're breathing, your lungs expand to take in more oxygen in it, thinking that you have to move or run quickly. You become more alert, your senses sharpen, you become much more aware, and you have a lot more energy available to your muscles to move quickly and for a long time. Something simple can also cause an acute stress, talking about that over promising. If you recognize that, these same things can happen. It might be on a smaller scale. All of a sudden you go, oh no, what just happened? And this full response does happen at a smaller scale. So it doesn't have to be a giant threat to your body. It can also be a small threat as well that can cause the stress response. So normally you have that acute stress and it goes away. But sometimes it becomes a chronic stress where either the stressor itself doesn't leave, or your body perceives that the stress is still there. So it can be either one of those. So we have a second hormonal response where those hormones, or some of those hormones, continue to flood our body and continue to cause all those things. So think of if you stayed where your heart rate was beating really fast all day, and you felt your blood pressure up and you're breathing really fast and you feel like your body's ready to go. How would that feel if you did that all day long? I think your body would be pretty tired. But that's what happens when we have this constant feeling of stress in our body, and it stays revved up, and that can go on for days, weeks, months, or years, which is not really the best thing. Normally, when a stressor ends, so say, you managed your response to the offering too much to a client, you jumped out of the way of that moving car, your body changes to a rest and digest system. So your body tends to relax. Your heart rate goes down, your blood pressure goes down, your pupils constrict, your blood vessels relax, your GI system becomes more active again, and your breathing slows down. So this is our normal resting rate. So if you're just sitting there having a normal day, this is where our body tends to stay in this rest and digest system. It saves energy and allows certain normal body functions to happen. And this is kind of where we want to come back to. So what happens if we have that gas pedal response, if the brakes never hit? in the short term and to some degree medium and long term, we increase our risk of heart damage and blood vessel damage. It contributes to weight gain and unchecked appetite. So we get a lot more hungry, which again, if makes sense, if your heart's beating really fast all the time, your body's ready to move all the time, it needs all that energy. Of course you're hungry. Of course you want to eat. Because of that increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, you have an increased risk of stroke or heart attack. It increases anxiety and depression. You have an inability to concentrate, it interrupts your sleep, it interrupts your digestion, and it causes headaches. So that's a pretty big secondary reaction to being stressed all the time. If we're thinking really long term, this is where the aha moment comes in. Chronic stress is an immunosuppressant. So what that means is you become more susceptible to infections and illness. So many of us have experienced this, where you've been just really stressed. You're not sleeping very well. You're working 14-hour days. You're doing this on end. Sounds like this is the time of season that tends to happen. Your kids just went to school. All of a sudden you stop and you get sick. That's because your body has suppressed your ability to fight off infection. And we tend to get sick a little bit more often. Like I mentioned before, it does contribute to cardiovascular issues, which is that heart attack, stroke, and heart damage. GI issues, inflammation in the gut, type 2 diabetes, and it can even lead to cancer and significant mental decline. So these are things we actually want to pay attention to. So being stressed all the time, again, whether it's from a specific event or just long term, we want to figure out how to manage. So there are some really good techniques to utilize, and everyone's different. Some of these you might look at and be like, there's no way I'm doing that. I'm not doing Tai Chi. But you might go for a walk in the woods. So any of these, try all of them, try a few of them, and see what sticks for you. A lot of these are good in the short term. So if you're feeling stressed in the moment, say you just got some really bad news, someone had passed away in your family, you got to work an extra weekend, doing some deep breathing might be really good. Taking a break and going for a walk around the building might be really good. In the long term, what really helps with stress, social support, getting really good sleep, and being active in the community and doing hobbies is a really good way to manage stress. If you find that you had a big stressor event and the event has passed and you're still feeling really revved up, and this is weeks and months later, and you've tried these things and they're not working, your body probably hasn't processed that event. That's a time where you reach out to your doc and say, hey, I need some help managing this. And they can send you in the right direction, which might be medication, it might be talk therapy, it might be support. Like there's other ways that can be helpful to you if you find that something happened and that stressor is gone, but you still feel it. So there's ways to manage it yourself, but also remember there's other people out there to help you if you feel like that stress is continuing to be unchecked for no good reason. And that's all I've got today.
Thank you, Amy. Very informative as always. And I definitely think, we all feel the stress as the, end of the season is near, and there's a lot to do in a short period of time. So again, PT360 and Amy over there, they have a lot of services available to us through our wellness program. So anybody that wants to talk more about this front, please contact myself and I'll get you hooked up with Amy over at PT360 or Champlain Medical as well. So good options available for all.
Bye, Amy. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Take it away, Ken.
Okay. Sharing screen. Here we go. Okay, do you see my screen?
We got it.
Okay. So today we had Amy Sheridan from PT360. For announcements, didn't get any, at least from my request to the people who normally give them to me. The wellness program link is still here. I had the weather outlook is, like we said earlier, we're looking for a nice day today, high near 80. Same, the weekend looks pretty good, and into next week, so that's great. And this week we're going to talk about the AT&T Snowball Tower in Hancock. And I think that Chris Klein is online, right?
Yeah, I'm here, Ken.
Okay. All right, I'll scroll up a little bit and let you take it away.
Okay. All right, so ECI was contracted with Construction Services of Branford out of Branford, Connecticut, to construct a new cell tower site at the top of Middlebury Snowball in Hancock, Vermont. Construction Services is installing the 180-foot tall lattice truss tower for AT&T. ECI's contract includes installation of power and communication conduits, construction of the yard, construction of the concrete tower foundation, and equipment pads, and to assist with the delivery of the tower and equipment to the site. The conduit run extended 6,700 linear feet from the utility pole located on Route 125 up to the yard site with 4 individual conduits in the trench. ECI had 3 crews over a period of a month and a half digging trench, installing conduit duct bank, building road, moving blast rock, and installing pole boxes. Blasting was required for rock removal for 2,000 linear feet of trench. ECI's blasting subcontractor was Capital Rock. The site also required blasting a 60-foot by 60-foot area to a depth of 13 feet for the construction of the tower foundation. The foundation consisted of a 2-foot thick, 40-foot by 40-foot base with a double mat of number 8 bar. 3 42-inch square piers with number 9 bars extend up from the base mat to a height of 10 feet for the tower legs. The total yardage of concrete was 130 yards. ECI was originally planning to fly the concrete by helicopter, but was able to build an access road suitable for Carrera Concrete's mixers and pump to access the top of the mountain. ECI currently is in the final stages of the contract and is restoring the ski slope in preparation for the winter ski season.
Love this picture. Is this yours?
Yeah. Brendan Erie and I, we were up in the Ranger, and I just looked off to the left-hand side going up the hill, and I was like, oh my God. So we ran over. Our tower is probably about, I don't know, 30 yards behind where I took this picture is from. I climbed up the last tower on this ski lift, and him and I took this picture. So get a lot of good mornings and a lot
So-
of nice sunsets up there for sure.
And it kind of also shows you that it's a special place up there and people are watching carefully everything that goes on when you start, digging and blasting and doing all these activities.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had multiple people just hiking the long trail come in and just be like, what's happening? What's going on? And,
Yep.
even just people from Middlebury that belong to the college or other just students and stuff like that. They're always on that mountain.
Yep. I included this picture here too. Oops. Went a little too far. Doesn't quite fit my screen.
That's all
See if I
right.
can zoom
Um,
it down a bit.
so yeah,
Oops.
this one here.
Let me get back to it. I zoomed down a bit and it went to the beginning. There we go. There you go.
That should work. So just a kind of a location as far as where we actually dug. You can see the Neil Star shelter down at the bottom, a small little brown dot, which is the base lodge. But if you follow to the left-hand side, you'll see Voter, which is a green trail. It's basically the trail just to the left of Lake Pleiad. That's where we installed the conduit run. If you follow that green line all the way up to the top, that's essentially the way that we ran the conduits.
Did we lose Ken?
I think Ken's frozen.
I'll pull it up. You don't see it. You got the email that you could share it, Chris? Are you in your office?
I am. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
In that email.
Yeah, I'm getting there, Matt.
Yep, sorry. Should have had it up. Can't find the email.
All right. All right, so yeah, like I was saying, this is essentially the trail that we took to install the duck bank all the way up to the top, switchbacks, and then the tower sits right about here, back in the woods. And I took that picture beforehand from right here. This gives a little better understanding of just the duck bank itself. So essentially the Neil Star shelter, like I said, was down here. We had to run the conduit trench across the parking lot to almost to Route 125. GMP wanted to drop a new pole in, so we pulled it in actually essentially from right here and continued up the mountain. There's a lot of different wetlands and stuff like that that we had to contend with, a lot of different areas that we had to also accommodate the mountain. So the mountain had some requests on how we installed it as well, just because this is an active ski slope and people will be skiing over top of it. They'll be grooming on it. So we essentially had to restore the slope as best we possibly could to its initial or previous condition. But I think we also did improve it quite a bit when we went through and blasted it and changed a bunch of the shapes of the rock and whatnot. So the mountain is extremely happy with how the finished product came out, and they said it's going to be a heck of a lot nicer for all the newer skiers and for them to be grooming. So we definitely did them a favor as well. I'll have to do this in two parts. So this is essentially looking at the tower. If you look at the base itself, the 34.3 by 34.3, this is just where the initially we were going to have the pad, but the concrete crew and Marty's suggestion is once we dug and excavated it for this base pad, it would have been easier for us to just go ahead and pour just a giant mat slab instead of using forms and stuff like that. So we just ended up bumping it from 34.3 to 40 feet. So it made it a lot quicker, went a lot easier. So that just gives you kind of the orientation of how everything was. This gives you cross-sectional view. We had a 6-inch reveal on all the piers. Piers went down 10 feet or so. And then we had the 2-foot mat slab with the double mounted rebar in there. Here's a picture of Rob Barber sitting in the Hitachi. This was basically, it wasn't the first part we hit ledge, but this was started when we started to really get into ledge. There's a bunch of ledge outcroppings here, kind of cliffs, but not really cliffs. Just a bunch of drop offs essentially. We ended up running the conduit trench right up through here to shave off some linear footage. Originally, we were supposed to run alongside the right-hand side of the trail all the way up, but we were able to cut corners, shorten it up, and blast through the rock. Definitely had this is when, almost into the 2,000 feet that we ended up having to blast for the most part. But, as you can see, there's a lot of shot rock. There's a lot of big cap rock that we ended up having to hammer and remove to be able to get in there. Here's a good picture of Capital Rock. I took this picture. The reason they're wearing their helmets right now with their earmuffs on is the drill rig's probably 2 feet behind me when I took this picture. So they're loading right behind the drill rig. This was our last blast that we had. Here's a photo of the yard. So as you can see, we had a lot of large rock to contend with. That blaster that I just showed in the previous picture wasn't the blaster who did this. So we had some variation as far as how the blasting went. And this one, we had some massive, massive rocks, some that the 330 wouldn't even pull out of the ground. So that shows you just how big they actually were. They wouldn't even fit in the back of the haul truck. So we ended up having to do a lot of hammering, probably about 2 weeks of hammering in this area. So that way we could actually get the rocks feasible to move in the haul truck. But where I took this, I'll show you in the next picture, one of the pictures coming up. You can kind of see the lip and this is where I'm standing, and it's pretty much flat. Originally, the yard surface was basically the front of where the haul truck was, but once it imploded, it sent it probably another 10 feet up into the air. So there was a lot of rock to deal with. A lot of trips with the haul truck. Essentially where Nick Wilson got his super trucker certificate from. And this is Tyler Rother installing the conduits. We had very specific spacing as far as what the conduits had to be. So they built this jig and in order to help them, these guys crushed it and laying out the conduit and stuff like that, along with the support team. So, they did an amazing job laying the conduit. And this is just Tyler marking our linear footage after that 1 stick of pipe. Another thing we had to contend with was when we were bedding everything with sand, water would infiltrate this trench and essentially start to wash some of the sand out. We had this issue. We actually struck a spring and it started washing the sand out before we even had it backfilled. And one of the things that we did was we took a bunch of the board gel and laid these bridges across. So that way the water and the sand and stuff like that would hit this and it wouldn't continue down the trench. So it would keep it contained in sections. Didn't really use this too much on the flatter sections of the trail, but once we started getting into the ledge and the steeper sections, we use this quite often. So that way we didn't lose our trench. And that way going forward, if water does get into that trench, it doesn't shit out. Here's a picture of the road. As you can see, we had wetlands and stuff like that. This is essentially, if you see the large rock, this was a water bar that went through there. We had to fill all the water bars in order for the haul truck to, easily and quickly get through the mountain. But this was the road that we built. This was a goat path before, a side-by-side could basically fit down it, if that. So once we went through and dug the trench, which is essentially along this side here, we had to drop all the spoils. We had to do a cleanup, and when we did a cleanup, we built the road so that way the haul truck could easily get up and down. And our intentions were to, at that point, have Carrera drive up to the top of their pump and their mixers. So this would aid us in the future. Here's the last switchback looking up. That last part where the conduit was being laid was down over the top of this hill. That last section of blast was right about here along this tree line. We ran it right up this steep section here and turned the corner and went up. So this is the last switchback where I'm standing right now from blast rock out of the yard. We filled this probably 4 to 5 feet in areas. So this is all just a giant fill section in order for us to build this road. We also helped out the mountain. This was a huge divot down into here. So skiers had a bunch of issues. Now they have a nice little slope that they can continuously travel on to go over top of this knoll and carry on down to the base. But this was after we, final seeded and mulched, road pretty much finalized. This was after we did all the concrete pours as well. This is when we were pouring the mat slab, a 2-foot thick slab, 40 by 40. Bob Bailey started laying the concrete down in the first lift before 5 o'clock in the morning. That was pretty awesome, pouring concrete under the light tower. And then the rest of the crew showed up and started pouring it. It took us, I want to say, about 5 hours or so to lay all the concrete in there. It was definitely a coordination effort from the entire crew to be able to get all the concrete trucks lined up and get them up to the top of the mountain, and not have one of them collide with each other on the hills or anything like that. So we had a bunch of radios and the whole crew just monitoring concrete trucks and their traveling, and we were able to accomplish this and get this laid in there pretty safely and came out very well. Here's a picture. I know it doesn't fit on the screen, but here's a picture with Marty. He's staring at all the bar and looking at the bolts up top. It was pretty critical to line everything up. Luckily, we did have a template, which you'll see in the next section. But in order to get these in there for him to be able to form, we had the surveyors come in, drop our center points down here, and then he just pulled a plumb bob up to the top and be able to center these as best as he possibly could. He did a great job. Was able to get them within 1/8 of an inch without having any surveying up top. So it was a good job on his part and the rest of the concrete crews. But as you can see in this picture, you can just see how many stirrups and the 9-bar sticking all the way up, and gives you some sort of height. See how tall they are. So here is the actual finished product before we pour. As you can see, we had these giant angle pieces that we ended up bolting together for the template, all sorts of cross members. Everything's pretty much rigid at this point, ready for concrete. This actually went together really smoothly. Definitely took some muscle to get it up there. Stuff was not light by any means, but everything went together really well, and it held properly and bolts came out perfect. Here's when we started to backfill. It took a lot of fill, as you can see. I mean, we had to be 6-inch reveal, so we had to fill, you know, about 9 feet worth of the 70405A B. And it took quite a bit of load to get it up there. I want to say it's well over 1,000 yards at this point to get it up to the surface that it's at right now. But as you can see, we still had some of the remaining rock from the blast, but we were using it to build this bank up. This slope drops off into the woods, so Derek and the excavator there was able to build a nice little berm on the back side of it to basically back our yard all the way up to the top, so that way we didn't lose anything. This is when the conduit was starting to get put into the yard, so we ran the trench up the driveway, stopped it short, and then once we got the yard pretty much cleaned out, we had originally this was supposed to be on a pad, but they couldn't get a transformer that was on a pad, so they ended up giving us one that was on a pole. So we dropped in a 30-foot pole up top, transformers up here. So this is where the communications and the power split off, and then the rest of the conduit running into the yard that the electrician installed. So here's it pretty much getting finished up, wrapped up. Contracted perimeter solutions to come in and do the fence with the barbed wire and all that stuff. We used them quite a bit in the past, but we're putting a 2-inch layer of the 3/4 inch clean stone as a topping stone, bailing it over the top of the 160 and finishing it up with a 27 inside. As you can see, there's the tower pier tops right there. So we definitely came up quite a bit. So that just goes to show how much we actually had to end up filling. So I think that's it for AT&T.
Pretty impressive job.
Very, very impressive job. You know, it was a great project to be on. I think we had a lot of fun up there. Definitely a lot of hooligans at some points, but you know, it's all part of it and having a good camaraderie. We definitely crushed it as far as putting the conduits in. You know, we've had total accolades from CSB and other contractors that are part of this project, and they said we did an absolutely amazing job. They're shocked at how good of a job we did, and they're very, very impressed with the way the ECI works.
Good. Maybe it'll lead to other work from them.
Let's hope.
Yep. So this photo is Scott Tomlinson on the left and John Zeno on the right. And this is the Cellular One site on the top of Irish Hill in Berlin, Vermont, back in, what did we decide? 1996, right, Ben?
That was, yep, that was 96. That was part of my crew. And if you look down to the bottom of the picture, you guys will see that this is on ledge. Scroll down a little bit. And the forms are hanging in the breeze right there. We had to fill up to the bottom of the forms first. It's all ledge down in there. That's 2 mats and number 9 bar, 6-inch on center. That's probably, I think that was 20 by 20. So there's about 60 yards in the base pinned to ledge because it was at least 4 foot average thickness. And then
pretty intense rebar there.
Yeah. There's another picture in the archive somewhere with a guy underneath tying some of the bolts when we got him in, and he climbed under Tomlinson's butt there underneath the 2 mats. That was a good job. Yeah. Similar when we filled it all up and the yard looked similar. We used to do a lot of these. It's kind of cool that we're still doing
we did a lot of them in the old days when the cellular business was just booming up here.
Yep.
Okay, good. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, especially Chris. That was a good job presenting, and I'll turn it back over to you, Matt.
Yes, I agree. If you're watching in a group setting, please let me know for attendance purposes. Let's have a safe day. Let's have a great day.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.